Hello, hello, everyone. Happy Wednesday. Today, I'm really excited about this conversation. I have the wonderful Mary Beth Simone with me, and she helps business owners create their disaster contingency plan. Is that the right way to word it?
Yeah, I usually call it a personal contingency plan for businesses or for
That's probably way
homeowners. Yeah.
nicer than how I just worded it. But I'm just thinking, oh, it's a disaster. So, like, let's plan for that and make sure we can figure what happens. Yes, that was much more eloquent. But yeah, I thought it was a very timely subject, and I think it's something that I think we all probably should have been doing in our businesses anyway. But this is one of those things that going through all of this, it's made it a real reality for us. So I'm so excited to have an expert on to talk about it. And why don't you share a little bit about you and your background so everybody gets a sense of who you are?
Sure. So I came to this work through personal experience. I used to work for Vanguard, a mutual fund investment company, for about 31 years. And I was getting ready to retire and was envisioning my post retirement career. But at the same time, one of my close friends who had retired 2 years before me was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer.
Mm.
And so I was working with her, helping her out, helping her navigate that. And she asked me if she did not survive, would I help her husband with the finances? And of course, I said yes. But I wanted her to show me what was going on in their financial world because we were really close friends, but we didn't talk about that kind of stuff.
Sure.
I knew stuff at a high
As many
level.
people don't.
Yes, exactly. Um, and so she never wanted to go there. I think that was a step too far while she was battling a life threatening disease. And so she survived for 18 months after the diagnosis, and then
Mm.
she passed away. And, um, and then I started helping her husband navigate the finances. She paid all of the bills, she did all of the investing. We were both project managers at Vanguard. Her husband didn't use a computer, he didn't know the passwords, he didn't have a cell
Yeah.
phone. Like they were completely different types of people from a technology perspective. Um, and so we started navigating that process. It took about 3 months to get through it. And I would come home and complain to my husband, like how difficult it was and how much there was to do. And one day he said to me, "Who is going to help me if you die first?" And that's when I realized, well, I need to start writing everything that I just learned down so that he is prepared and teach him what he needs to know. And when I was going through the process of creating our plan, that's when I realized that I wanted all of my friends and family, I wanted everyone to have that plan so that no one needs to navigate that ambiguity blindly again. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, so then I started my consulting practice and I do some project management consulting, but I primarily help business owners and individuals create their personal contingency plan.
I think it's so important because as a couples counselor, I cannot tell you how many people I see that, like something happens, like you're saying, like a major health issue, or somebody passes away, or even a divorce, where one person has been completely in the dark, and sometimes by choice. It's not always like I'm keeping you in the dark. It's like a choice, or they didn't feel like it was their strength or whatever. And it does make it so much harder because they don't know where to start. And I know, like in my family, even my husband would say to me sometimes, he's like, if something happened to you, I wouldn't even know where to start from the business aspect. Right. And like, he wouldn't even know who does my payroll. Like, he doesn't know anything, and everything's password protected. So it's like one of those things where we've talked about this, and I just know, like, okay, we need to figure something out. We need to, and then it's like, well, where do you start? How do you figure that out? And so I think it's a really important service.
Yeah. And I think that that's probably the reason that a lot of people don't take any steps is that when you think of the whole scope of what needs to be completed in a contingency plan, it can be overwhelming. And when you don't know where to start, you just decide not to start.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. Because it's too overwhelming. And that,
Yeah.
yeah, psychologically, that's what happens, right? We just kind of shut down, or we're like, okay, yeah, I'll get to that, in that epic amount of free time that we all have.
Right. Where we would rather do something that is more satisfying or fun or
Yes.
like emotionally positive.
Yeah.
Because when you're creating a plan, you do need to go to that place where you're thinking, okay, I'm going to be hospitalized for 2 weeks or a month, or, I'm going to be incapacitated in some way. I may not be able to make decisions. Like you have to go there in order to really do it well.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, and I think it's about hopefully, through our conversation that people start to think of it as I've always thought like once I do it, I'm going to feel really good about the fact that I'm looking out for my family and my employees. And so knowing like the people I care about, I'm actually still going to be taking care of them, even if I'm not in a position to do it personally. Right.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And that's what I really encourage people to think about, that it is a gift to their family, to their loved ones, to their business partners, to take this step and to create this plan so that they know what to do. So it'll never be easy, but it'll be way easier than if they were operating in the dark.
Yeah. And in the dark after a trauma or a loss or some grief.
Yes.
And so that's even a more difficult position to be in. Is this what you're talking about? Is that different than, say, like a professional will, or is that the same thing?
Yeah, well, so I am not an attorney, but I work closely with estate attorneys, financial planners, CPAs, insurance brokers. All of those professionals want their clients to have a contingency plan because they only focus on one aspect of it. So your estate planning attorney is not going to make sure that you have a plan for your passwords. So let's say that you use an online password manager. Well, that's great for you, and there is a backup plan. Like if your second in command is adept at using an online password manager, that works well. But what if they don't? Like my second in command is not an online kind of person, and needs to have everything in writing on paper. So we have to think through uh, what that person needs. But in this plan, it's going to include your passwords, your will, power of attorney, um, your living will or healthcare directive, your insurance policies, your birth certificate, your marriage certificate, your divorce decree. I mean, it has your bank accounts, your investments, everything in the plan.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah, and like you're saying, I think I thought of even that, like how difficult it would be to get passwords. And I did hear from someone else I had talked to. They said, and I didn't realize this because I use like LastPass, that you need to set as somebody as your backup person. Otherwise, they can't get access and reset it.
That's right. And so the only other thing I would ask people to think about is, so for example, my husband is my second in command. But let's take the COVID situation that we have now. We live together. So if one of us got sick, and based on our demographics, our age, there's a good chance that maybe both of us would get sick. Then what's the plan? So
Right.
I also encourage people to have a secondary power of attorney and to have them well versed in where everything is. And then when you think about that person, does a LastPass password manager work? Like, can you have a secondary person to send your
Right.
passwords to? A lot to think through.
That's a good point that I didn't think about. That, yeah, like you're saying, if you live with the person who's your second in command, if something happened at the same time, like
Right. We travel together.
there needs to be a contingency in the contingency.
There is. So it feels like it could go on forever, but at least I think that if we do the second in command and then the backup to our backup.
Right.
So today we just got our secondary power of attorney paperwork notarized. I'm so excited. We like went in with our face masks into UPS and got our paperwork notarized. So I'm so glad to have that. Especially now, I felt an urgency
Yeah.
around having that secondary power of attorney in place.
Oh, good. Yeah, and that's the thing. I guess I'm thinking of, you know, that there's going to be a positive in taking care of this, and it's one of those things that I think it like lingers in the back of your mind, and we don't realize how much that affects our energy and our feelings about things.
I agree. So coming into, once we all in the US started to accept that this was going to be our reality for a while, I felt relieved that everything is documented, everything is in place, and that I have a double backup plan for people who can step in.
So usually when you're doing this with people and they have a spouse, is it usually the spouse is the backup?
It depends. So a lot of the people who I work with, they have a small business and they have a family. So it depends. It's different for everyone. So I would say that the primary financial manager, there's no gender norm as to who is doing it. People just divide and conquer based on their skill set. And sometimes it is a business partner who may be the second in command because they're just so entrenched in the day to day and the accounts and stuff, and the spouse really isn't that involved in the
Right.
finances. Yeah.
Yeah, because I was thinking about that, like not in the bigger picture, but like I have, somebody who takes care of the day to day of my business, and that would be the person who would already understand the processes and the all that stuff. But at the same time, like, my spouse is my most trusted, reliable person, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
And it's worth thinking through. So that might be a great system if you were to become ill or if something happened to you, for your spouse to know that there was another person, to rely on who was
yeah,
well versed in everything.
absolutely. So I guess when you're working with people, is there something that you see that's coming up for them that kind of keeps like holds them back from taking these steps?
Well, I think there's a few things that hold people back. So, one is accepting their mortality, and this is regardless of age. So, I typically work with people who are 35 to 65. They are the most motivated to put a plan in place. But if they are like in good health and feel like they have a long road ahead of them yet to go, they may feel like, well, I don't need it yet. Which with the pandemic, I'm just so grateful because it is agnostic to age, and it doesn't matter whether you eat kale every day or
Yeah.
yeah, so it can affect everyone. So that's one thing that holds people back. Another thing is if their second in command is a child, an adult child, it can be a difficult conversation. Um, so the client of mine may be interested in creating the plan, but then when they want to engage their second in command, that is their adult child, it may be a little bit uncomfortable. It's a little bit emotional
Mm,
because you just have to think about, why are we talking about this?
yeah.
But I'm so proud of some people who can they can get through that, and their adult children are grateful to be having that conversation while their parents are well, and really to understand everything.
Yeah, and like you said, I think I've seen that where I've had clients who were in their late 50s, 60s and had a parent pass and nothing was together or set up. And the amount of work that they had to do to like take care of things and make sure the rest of the family was taken care of and, just put all the affairs in order. I don't think people realize how much it
Yeah.
takes. Like it took months. It took many, many months, if not, might even been almost a year.
Yeah.
And I remember like after all of that, they're like, I am not doing this to my kids. Like I need to take for my adult children, for those people were like, I want to make sure that, they don't have to deal with all the aftermath. And so
Yeah.
it's like a way of taking care still.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It takes a person who has that compassion for the people who may be left to deal with things after they're gone. Some people can't think that far ahead, but for those who can imagine their family members struggling, and as you said, dealing with the emotions as well. So I know from personal experience, it was really difficult to be focused on paperwork intensively while needing to grieve. It's like I had to kind of put that aside and try and take care of business. And so I was working pretty, in a pretty dedicated fashion in my free time to help my friend's husband. And it took us 3 months to get through the bulk of it.
Wow.
But the whole process is a year. So there are certain deadlines that have to be met within a year of the death. And that's really about like corporate reimbursements for healthcare and things like that. And
Right.
then there's the taxes that have to be filed.
Absolutely. And like you said, I think that's the hardest part is if you're doing that, it can really hinder the grieving process or people just drop the ball on stuff because they are in the middle of grieving, right?
Absolutely.
Understandably so.
Yep.
But that has big consequences, especially if the idea is like, oh, my business is my safety net for my family, or, like even if they could sell the business, which I know that like it can take up to 2 years to sell a business. Like it's not a quick endeavor. So you got to keep it running until then, right?
Right. Yeah. I
So
mean, it's good to know what that would take.
absolutely.
So if there is a business owner in your family, it's a good idea to do a 30, 60, 90-day, contingency plan. What would happen if that business owner is out of the game for 30 days, 60 days, 90 days? When do you decide that the business is either going to be sold or, yeah, it's a great exercise.
So when they say, okay, I'm ready to start this process and they come to you, generally, how long does that whole process take?
Yeah, so to put a plan in place, it takes about 30 days. So I work with people in two ways to create the contingency plan. One is a DIY plan for people who are self motivated, are really capable of running a project on their own, or kind of technically savvy, um, and like to, be in charge of more of the work for a lower price. And then I work with people in a full service capacity. Um, so more intensively in a 30-day window. So there's a lot of work to be done. On average, it takes the client about 12 hours to complete all of the work. So that's between meeting with me and work that they do on their own. But I like to get it finished, completed in 30 days so that, it's just, heads down, we work on this, and then you're finished. And then you go back and you revisit the plan annually when
Yeah.
you're preparing your taxes and make updates if there are any new accounts that have been opened or any changes that need to be noted.
See, when you said that 12 hours, I was like, that's amazing. That's hardly anything. Cause I think in my mind, I build it up as such a big, it just when you have no idea where to begin or what it involves, it feels insurmountable, right?
Yeah, yeah. So, and I would say like the first thing that I ask people to work on is their passwords. Like figure out who you're targeting, who needs access to your passwords, and make sure it's a system that works for not only you, but the other people who are going to depend on that information. And then the next thing that's really pretty simple to manage is to get your legal documents in place. So statistically 40% of adults, American adults over 50, do not have any legal estate planning documents in place.
Wow.
40%. And so that's like a self-reported number, so to AARP. So we're not sure if that's really the real number. But with that in mind, I propose that every adult needs to have a will and a power of attorney and a living will or healthcare directive. So those things are not really hard to get into place, and you're a good part of the way there if you take care of that.
Right. And yeah, and last week I spoke with Krista Hermance, a lawyer who talked about wills and trusts. And I know right after that call, like I would have used her, but I'm no longer in California. I immediately contacted a legal firm here because I was like, oh, we need to get this together.
Yes, and it's really not that hard for you, right? You have to pay for it, but it's not that
Yes.
hard to get it in place,
Yeah.
right? And right now, attorneys are, I would say, generally available,
Yeah.
and you can get their attention. And yeah,
Yeah. Absolutely. And yeah, sometimes it takes something terrible to be the catalyst, but hopefully, again, it's, we take care of this so that in the long term, we're in a much better position. Right.
yeah, and like to that end, I would suggest like testing your plan when you hear scenarios that other people are going through. So we had a friend who's a younger family member last year was hospitalized for pneumonia, a young man, and he was out of work for, I don't know, at least over a month. And my husband is self-employed, and he was saying, I don't know what I would do if I was out of work for a month. I don't have short-term disability. Uh, and he's the owner of the business and has employees, and that he couldn't get short-term disability. Or no, he had a policy, but it wasn't that good. It was like uh, a pittance every month. So then we started checking around, and we called insurance brokers, and there was a much better policy that he got for everyone who works for him and himself for less money than he was paying
Oh,
before.
wow.
And so it's great like to question our own preparedness in the context of things that happen to other people, and then to start shopping around.
Absolutely. I know I mean, it's not nearly as intense or severe, but in the time that I've owned my business, which has been um, like 9 years, a little over 9 years, I have had, pregnancies and births, and then I've had some traumas. And then even the last one that I had was I had to have emergency surgery for my appendix, which again is not the most difficult surgery, but it kept every time I went through something like that, it kept reiterating my model was if I don't sit in a chair, I'm not making money. Right. And so not being able to see clients, having to cancel clients for post surgery recovery. So I went back a lot faster than I probably should have or wanted to. And because I was like, I have to show up and I have to make money. If I didn't have that pressure, I would have stayed home longer. Like I would have allowed myself more recovery time. And that happened. That was August of 2018. And after that, it was in November that I said, okay, let's move. Because we had been talking about possibly one day moving. And I said, I just need to change how I'm approaching everything. Now, I'm not suggesting everybody move, but
Not
but
now.
it was the wake up call of this wasn't that big, but it was still enough to say, hey, this isn't sustainable. Like, I'm only getting older. Things can happen that we just don't plan for. I need to set my life up in a way that's going to be more supportive if something major happens, right?
Yeah.
Not like I'm looking for that, but like not having that pressure. And I tell you, like, we made the move and all this. And like December, I was sick for almost all of December with the flu, and I didn't work at all. And it didn't impact my income. Like everything was fine, So like being able to be in that position, and that's where again that might be sound extreme like moving across the country, but I realized like I need to redo things, and maybe it's not even like making a life change, but it's like I need to figure out how can I structure things so that I still can be okay if something were to happen.
Yeah. Right. And I think we all need to think that way.
Absolutely. Well, then, are there other recommendations that you would have for people if they're kind of on the fence? Like, I want to start, I know I need to do this, but I don't know. Like, it feels a little overwhelming.
Yeah, so I do have a free personal contingency plan kit on my website. So people can just text KIT to 33777 and they'll receive three components. So one is the instructions on how to make their own password book. It's the one that I make for my clients. And it's a very flexible book. I think that people will enjoy that. A lot of the materials are available on Amazon. And then you have my proprietary pages to put in there. And then the next item is a medical history form. So everybody can download that, update it with all of any prescriptions, herbs that you take, any pre-existing conditions, diagnosis dates, family history. Once you complete it, you just print it off before you go to a doctor's appointment and you no longer have to fill out any family history or give them an update. You just hand it to them. They can scan it. They can keep it. You have more on the computer. Makes it super simple. And then the next item in there is a 12-question checklist to help people get started on creating their contingency plan.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Like, well, and I think, that feels, hopefully for people, it feels really manageable. I mean, the thought of that, like, okay, I just get these things. And I think so many things, it's like, if you have the framework and then you have the small steps to do it, it doesn't
Yes.
feel as overwhelming, right?
Yes. Yes. And so it's more important to take some steps rather than, getting frozen and not moving forward.
Absolutely. So I'm so glad again that you were able to come on, because I don't even think I realized that I knew that because being a therapist, we have to have a professional will. So like I knew about that, but it was one of those other things where like all of the business logistical stuff and thinking like, I don't even know where to begin. I didn't even realize there was somebody that would take care of that. So I'm so grateful to have met you because I think this is going to be really helpful. And especially, for my Biz Bestie audience, it's female entrepreneurs. And so, a lot of business women out there who are the caretakers of their family. And so they need to take care of themselves here so that they can still have that afterwards, right?
Yes, that's right. A lot of women have a lot on their plate between
Yeah.
business and home. So, and we just do it naturally and don't think about the people who don't know how we do what we do. And it's
Yeah.
important to start bringing people into the fold so that they understand the process.
No, I love that. And like I said, when working with couples, I really do recommend, like, even if one person is the main person to like handle, like, say, the finances, both people, there should be a monthly meeting where you're meeting and both people are in on the same page,
Yes,
because it's, even if they're not going to be in charge of it, we all have to understand what's going on because things do change. And then we're like, oh, we forgot to tell you about that,
right.
and it's a big
Exactly.
deal. So,
It is. It is. And it's hard. So, I mean, even once you get a plan in place, I recommend, reviewing it with your second in command every, 3 to 6 months, because when they're not doing it on a regular basis, it's hard to integrate into their frame of reference. So,
right. Well, thank you again. Is there any last bit of advice or kind of anything that you think of that would be helpful? I mean, obviously, everyone's going to go text KIT to 33777.
yes. And if you don't have your will, call your favorite estate planning attorney today.
Yes, yes. Wonderful. And if you wanted more information, I've put her Mary Beth's website up. It's nichepartnershipconsulting.net. And everyone should head on over there and find out more information about setting up, because it's only 12 hours. That sounds so doable.
It is doable.
For some people, I guess being from the Bay Area, it's like I know people that commute like an hour and a half, 2 hours a day. And so now that they're working from home, that's like 4 hours a day that they're earning back.
That's right. They could do it in a week.
Exactly. It could be so quick. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much, Mary Beth, for coming on. And yeah, I'm hoping this is a good catalyst for you to go out and say, okay, I need to, in those small steps, let me just text and get the free contingency plan and get that started. And maybe it motivated you enough to just call and actually start setting up and do the full thing too.
Yeah, well, thank you, Amber. It was a pleasure to be on today. I
Thank
love
you.
your show.